The last warning alarms faded into a dull, almost melodic hum as Captain Vexera's fingers danced across the quantum interface. Around her, the bridge of the quantum whisper thrummed with an energy that was equal parts anticipation and rebellion. Each crew member was a testament to the Zornak Collective's most spectacular failure. Brilliant minds crushed beneath the weight of bureaucratic mediocrity. Dr. Krolnak, the ship's lead xenobiological researcher, adjusted his neural interface with a series of sharp, precise movements. His three-fingered hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from a cocktail of excitement and suppressed rage. Final quantum encryption is in place, he announced, his vocoder translating his complex native language into a crisp, almost mechanical tone. We have approximately 72 standard cycles before the collective detects our deviation. Vexera's translucent membrane, what humans might recognize as a combination of skin and sensory organ, rippled with a pattern that would translate to a predatory smile. "Plenty of time," she responded, her voice carrying the weight of years of institutional frustration. The quantum whisper was no ordinary research vessel, cobbled together from stolen prototypes, modified black market quantum technologies, and experimental systems that would have been summarily rejected by any standard research committee. The ship was a physical manifestation of rebellion. Its hull absorbed and redirected energy in ways that defied conventional understanding. Its quantum resonance dampeners were a masterpiece of illegal engineering that could theoretically render the vessel completely undetectable. But this was more than just a scientific expedition. This was a middle finger to an entire galactic bureaucracy. "Navigation," Vexera barked. "Confirm our quantum drift parameters." Yix, the ship's navigation specialist, was a young researcher whose neural patterns marked her as a statistical anomaly even among the Zornak. Her response was a burst of data that transformed the bridge's holographic displays into a complex three-dimensional representation of potential trajectories. Quantum drift is within acceptable margins. Earth's solar system is surprisingly complex. Our historical databases are woefully inadequate. The truth behind their mission was known only to a select few. Officially, they were conducting a routine genealogical survey of a restricted observation zone. Unofficially, they were the tip of a political spear, a secret mission funded by a shadowy faction within the Zornak Collective that believed humanity represented something far more significant than the standard classification protocol suggested. Dr. Krolnak leaned toward Vexera, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "The faction that funded this mission believes humans are an anomaly, not just another developing species, but something different." Vexera's sensory membranes flickered, the equivalent of a knowing smile. "Different how?" "Unpredictable," Krolnak responded, pulling up a series of fragmented data streams. "Our standard sinological models break down when applied to human technological and social development. They adapt. They innovate. They're fundamentally nonlinear in their approach to problem solving." The bridge fell into a moment of contemplative silence. Each crew member understood the risks. Detection would mean complete professional annihilation. Worse, it would mean validation of the very bureaucratic system they sought to challenge. Yix suddenly straightened, her neural interface sparking with an unexpected burst of activity. "Captain, I'm detecting anomalies in our quantum shielding. The closer we get to Earth's solar system, the more unstable our containment fields become." Vexera's response was immediate. "Adjust quantum resonance. Compensate for local electromagnetic variations." But something was different. Something was waiting. The quantum whisper pressed forward, a vessel of rebellion, scientific curiosity, and barely contained hope. They were about to break every rule in the xenological handbook. And they knew it. They had no idea how right they were. The holographic displays erupted with a kaleidoscope of data that defied everything in the Zornak xenological archives. Dr. Krolnak's neural implants began to overheat, struggling to process the sheer complexity of the information streaming from Earth's technological ecosystem. "This is impossible," he muttered, his vocoder crackling with a mix of frustration and genuine awe. Yix's navigation console flickered with warning signals. The ship's advanced scanning systems, designed to be invisible and undetectable, were experiencing systematic failures, not from external interference, but from the overwhelming complexity of human technological signatures. "Look at this," Krelnak called out, expanding a holographic display that showed a network of interconnected systems more intricate than anything the Zornak had ever encountered. What appeared to be simple communication networks were actually living, breathing ecosystems of information exchange. A single human data center contained more computational complexity than entire Zornak research planets. Their quantum computers, which the aliens had considered the pinnacle of technological achievement, looked like primitive abacuses compared to the distributed computing networks sprawling across the human planet. Captain Vexera leaned forward, her sensory membranes shifting into a pattern of intense concentration. "Explain," she demanded. Krelnak's hands moved rapidly across the holographic interface, pulling apart layers of data. Their technological development doesn't follow any predictable pattern. It's organic, chaotic, almost like a living organism. The ship's most advanced predictive algorithms began to fail. Normally, these systems could map out technological trajectories with near-perfect accuracy. But human technology defied every model. One moment, a technological approach seemed primitive. The next, it would leap forward with a solution that was nothing short of revolutionary. "Their internet," Yix interjected, her voice a mixture of wonder and confusion. "It's not just a communication network. It's a collective intelligence system that operates on principles we can't even comprehend." A particularly fascinating discovery caught Krelnak's attention. Humans were simultaneously developing multiple potentially world-changing technologies: quantum computing, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, renewable energy. And they were doing so through a method that could only be described as organized chaos. "They're not just developing technology," Krelnak said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They're evolving with it. The technology is an extension of their cognitive process." Vexera's response was immediate. "Bring up the social network analysis." The holographic display shifted, revealing a complex web of human interactions that looked more like a living neural network than a traditional communication system. Individual humans seemed to be both consumers and creators of information, technology, and culture in a way that defied all existing xenological models. Their problem-solving approach, Yix noted, pulling up another set of data streams, it's fundamentally nonlinear. They don't just solve problems, they redefine the entire context of the problem. A sudden burst of interference caused the ship's systems to momentarily destabilize. Krelnak's initial reaction was concern, but as he analyzed the interference, he realized something far more terrifying. The humans weren't just detecting their presence, they were actively probing it. "Captain," he said, his voice carefully controlled, "I believe we may have a situation." Vexera's sensory membranes rippled with a mixture of excitement and growing concern. Whatever they had expected to find on Earth, this was something entirely different. The Zornak Collective's carefully constructed understanding of emerging civilizations was about to be completely dismantled, and they were trapped in the middle of it. The first warning came as a microscopic flutter in the quantum resonance dampeners, so subtle that most species would have missed it entirely. But for the Zornak, it was tantamount to a 5-alarm fire. "Quantum slip drive is destabilizing," Yix announced, her voice stripped of all previous excitement, and now laden with pure clinical terror. Her neural interface began to spark, small electric arcs dancing between her sensory nodes as she fought to maintain control. Captain Vexera's command protocols kicked in with ruthless efficiency. "Initiate emergency quantum stabilization sequence," she barked, her sensory membranes contracting into tight, defensive patterns. Dr. Krelnak's hands moved with desperate speed across the holographic interface, but each correction they attempted only seemed to accelerate the system's breakdown. It was as if the very fabric of space-time around their ship was resisting. "This is impossible," Krelnak muttered, a phrase that was becoming their mission's unintended motto. The ship's experimental quantum technologies, stolen prototypes that represented the absolute bleeding edge of Zornak engineering, were being systematically dismantled by something they couldn't even comprehend. The quantum whisper's hull began to resonate at frequencies that shouldn't exist. Quantum entanglement protocols that had been their ultimate stealth mechanism were unraveling like cheap fabric. Each attempt to hide only made them more visible, more vulnerable. The electromagnetic spectrum of this solar system, Yix reported, her voice trembling. It's not just interfering with our systems. It's actively analyzing them, deconstructing them. Vexera understood the implications immediately. This wasn't random interference. This was something far more terrifying, a technological ecosystem that was consciously responding to their presence. The ship's experimental quantum dampeners, a technology so advanced it had been classified at the highest levels of Zornak research, began to fail in a cascade of quantum-level disruptions. What should have been invisible quantum fluctuations became visible ripples in the local space-time fabric. "We can't activate the emergency quantum slip," Krelnak confirmed, his voice a mix of professional calm and an underlying panic. "Every attempt to generate a quantum tunnel is being redirected, parsed, analyzed." It was Dr. Krelnak who first articulated the horrifying truth. "They're not just detecting us," he said. "They're learning from us. Our most advanced defensive technologies are becoming teaching moments for their systems." The ship's internal systems began to display impossible data streams. Fragments of their own technological signatures were being reflected back at them, subtly modified, improved upon in ways that defied their understanding of technological development. Yix's navigation console erupted in a complex dance of holographic warnings. "We're being contained," she realized. "Not attacked. Contained. Like a specimen in a research facility." Vexera's response was instantaneous. Options. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any verbal response could have been. They were trapped. Not by force. Not by violence. But by a technological ecosystem so advanced, so adaptive, that it was treating their most sophisticated evasion techniques like an interesting puzzle to be solved. The quantum whisper, a vessel of rebellion, of scientific curiosity, was now entirely at the mercy of a civilization they had grossly underestimated. And somewhere, beyond their failing quantum shields, humanity was watching, learning, preparing. The first indication came not from government agencies or military installations, but from an unlikely source, a sleep-deprived graduate student named Dr. Elena Rodriguez. Her screen flickered with anomalous data patterns that most researchers would have dismissed as background noise. But Elena wasn't most researchers. Her doctoral work focused on quantum informatics and cross-dimensional signal analysis, a field so cutting-edge that most of her colleagues considered it borderline science fiction. "Holy shit," she whispered, her fingers flying across multiple holographic interfaces. Within minutes, her initial anomaly detection protocol had triggered a cascade of alerts across multiple research networks. What should have been a quiet night of data analysis became the beginning of humanity's most extraordinary first contact scenario. At the National Aerospace Intelligence Center, Dr. Marcus Chen was pulling his third consecutive all-nighter. A veteran of multiple classified research programs, he'd developed an almost supernatural ability to detect patterns in chaos. The moment Elena's data hit the interdepartmental network, his systems began to light up like a Christmas tree. "This is not terrestrial," Marcus muttered, pulling up multiple layers of signal analysis. The quantum signature was unlike anything in their databases, not because it was alien, but because it was fundamentally different from any known technological framework. What made the human response truly remarkable was its speed and collaborative nature. Within hours, a global network of researchers, hackers, scientists, and intelligence specialists began to converge on the anomaly. No single institution controlled the investigation. Instead, it became a fluid, organic process of collective investigation. A group of MIT quantum computing specialists began developing real-time analysis protocols. European space research centers cross-referenced the anomalous data with decades of astronomical observations. A team of Brazilian network security experts started developing adaptive scanning algorithms that could parse the alien technological signatures. Elena found herself at the center of a storm she had inadvertently triggered. Her personal communication devices began to light up with encrypted messages from agencies she didn't even know existed. A secure video conference was quickly arranged, connecting her with researchers and intelligence specialists from around the globe. The quantum resonance patterns, she explained, her voice calm despite the magnitude of the discovery, suggest a technological framework that doesn't just communicate information. It adapts to the communication medium itself. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the conference. It's like the technology is alive, not biological, but responsive. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about detecting an alien presence. This was about understanding a fundamentally different approach to technology, to information, to existence itself. Military strategists began to prepare containment protocols. But these were not the aggressive, defensive measures of previous eras. This was a nuanced, almost scientific approach, an attempt to understand before acting. Classified research facilities around the world began to mobilize, not with weapons, but with the most powerful tools humanity possessed: curiosity, collaboration, and an unprecedented capacity for rapid innovation. The alien vessel, the Quantum Whisper, had no idea what was coming. Humanity was hunting, and they were hunting with the most dangerous weapon in their arsenal: pure, unbridled intellectual curiosity. Inside the Quantum Whisper, Captain Vexera watched in growing horror as their most advanced defensive protocols became nothing more than educational material for human researchers. Dr. Krelnack's hands moved in a frenzied dance across the quantum interface. "They're not just analyzing our technology," he said, his voice a mixture of scientific fascination and pure terror. "They're rewriting our own defensive algorithms in real time." What the Zornak considered an impenetrable quantum scrambling protocol was being systematically dismantled, understood, and then reconstructed with terrifying efficiency. Each defensive measure became a beacon, each attempt to hide only revealing more about their technological framework. Meanwhile, in a nondescript research facility outside of Denver, Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her hastily assembled team were engaged in what could only be described as technological telepathy. They weren't just observing the alien technology, they were communicating with it. "Look at this," Elena said, pulling up a holographic display that looked more like an abstract painting than a scientific readout. "The quantum signatures aren't just data. They're conversational." Dr. Marcus Chen leaned in, his eyes reflecting the complex patterns dancing across the screen. "It's like they're leaving breadcrumbs, intentionally." The human team had discovered something profound. The alien defensive protocols were not just technological systems, but complex communication attempts. Each layer of encryption was a potential dialogue, each quantum fluctuation a message waiting to be understood. On the Quantum Whisper, Yix's navigation systems began to fail in increasingly bizarre ways. Quantum tunneling calculations that should have been impossible to intercept were being not just decoded, but anticipated. The ship's most advanced predictive algorithms were being turned into a learning platform for human researchers. "We're being studied," Vexera realized, not as a threat, not as an enemy, but as a complex system to be understood. The technological warfare had become something entirely unexpected. It wasn't about attack or defense. It was about perception, about understanding. Human researchers began developing adaptive algorithms that could interface with the alien technology at a quantum level. What would have taken decades of research was being accomplished in hours through a global collaborative effort that transcended traditional research methodologies. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A team of Brazilian network security experts, working in conjunction with quantum physicists from CERN, developed an interface that could translate the quantum signatures into something approaching a comprehensible language. "It's not encryption," one of the researchers noted during a global conference call. It's a form of communication we've never seen before. The technology itself is a message. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's team discovered something even more extraordinary. The alien quantum signatures contain not just technological information, but what seemed to be traces of cultural, historical, and potentially biological data. Each defensive protocol was a complex narrative, a story told through quantum fluctuations. The Zornak crew watched in growing desperation as their most secure systems became an open book. Their quantum resonance dampeners, designed to be undetectable, were being mapped, understood, and potentially replicated by human researchers. "We're losing control," Krelnak muttered, "but they're not conquering us. They're learning us." Captain Vexera understood the true nature of their situation. This wasn't a battle. This was first contact. And humanity was writing the rules of engagement in real time. The Quantum Whisper had become a living textbook, and humanity was the most extraordinary research team in the universe. The containment facility was nothing like what the Zornak had imagined. It wasn't a military installation. It wasn't a research prison. It was something far more sophisticated, a living, breathing ecosystem of technological and diplomatic possibility. Dr. Aria Chen, the lead negotiator, was unlike any diplomatic agent the aliens had ever encountered. Her background was a deliberate paradox, a quantum physicist with a dual doctorate in linguistic anthropology and game theory. Her approach to first contact was less about protocols and more about understanding. "We're not here to dissect you." Aria spoke into the quantum communication interface, her words carefully constructed to be simultaneously precise and open-ended. "We're here to communicate." Inside the Quantum Whisper, Captain Vexera and her crew experienced something they had never anticipated. The human containment was not a restriction, it was an invitation. The facility itself was a marvel of adaptive architecture. Walls could become transparent or opaque. Environmental conditions shifted in microscopic increments. It was as if the entire space was a living communication platform, constantly adjusting to maximize potential understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been instrumental in designing the communication protocols. Her quantum linguistics algorithm transformed communication from a linear process into a multidimensional exchange. Words were no longer just sounds or symbols. They became complex quantum signatures that could carry multiple layers of meaning simultaneously. Their language, Elena explained to her team, isn't just about communication. It's a form of technological negotiation. The first true breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Krelnak, the alien xenobiologist, realized that human communication was fundamentally different from any species they had previously encountered. It wasn't about information transfer. It was about continuous adaptation and mutual understanding. A series of holographic interfaces began to emerge, creating the communication space that was neither human nor Zornak, but something entirely new. Mathematical principles danced with linguistic constructs. Technological signatures became a form of dialogue. "We're not just talking," Marcus Chen observed, watching the complex interactions. "We're co-creating a new form of communication." The human team had prepared for multiple scenarios: conflict, scientific exchange, cultural misunderstanding. But what was happening defied all previous first contact models. This wasn't an interrogation. This wasn't a diplomatic negotiation. This was a collaborative process of mutual discovery. Captain Vexera found herself in a position she had never anticipated. The humans weren't treating them as potential threats or research specimens. They were treating the Zornak crew as potential partners in understanding. Aria Chen's approach was revolutionary. Instead of seeking to extract information, she was creating the communication framework that allowed both species to contribute equally. Each question was an invitation. Each technological probe was a potential bridge. "Tell us about your journey," Aria invited, her quantum communication interface creating a space of absolute intellectual safety. Not as conquerors, not as researchers, but as travelers. The Quantum Whispers crew realized they were no longer trapped. They were being welcomed. A complex holographic representation began to form, part language, part technological signature, part pure mathematical beauty. It was a conversation that transcended traditional communication, a meeting of minds that were fundamentally different yet profoundly connected. Humanity had not just contained an alien vessel. They had opened a door to an entirely new way of understanding existence itself. The negotiation chamber defied every conventional understanding of diplomatic space. It was less a room and more a living, breathing ecosystem of communication. Walls that shifted like quantum probability fields, surfaces that could translate emotional and intellectual states into visual languages unknown to either species. Captain Vexera realized they were no longer prisoners. They were participants in something far more profound. Dr. Aria Chen sat across from Dr. Krelnak, their communication no longer constrained by traditional linguistic barriers. The quantum interface between them created a space where thoughts were not just translated but transformed, where each conceptual exchange was a collaborative act of creation. "Your mission was never just about research," Aria stated, not as an accusation, but as an observed truth. Krelnak's sensory membranes rippled in what might have been a gesture of surrender or profound respect. "We came to understand an anomaly," he responded. "We became the anomaly." The Zornak Collective's deepest fear was being realized in real time. Their most classified research suggested that some civilizations were not just technological species, but living systems of adaptive intelligence. Humanity was proving to be the ultimate expression of that hypothesis. Behind the scenes, a global network of researchers, diplomats, and scientists worked in a state of coordinated chaos. This wasn't a negotiation between two species, it was a recalibration of cosmic understanding. Elena Rodriguez's quantum linguistics team had discovered something extraordinary. The alien technological signatures contained not just information, but a form of collective memory, a technological DNA that held the entire history of the Zornak civilization. Each defensive protocol, each quantum fluctuation was a story waiting to be understood. "We're not just talking," Marcus Chen observed to his team. "We're performing a kind of intellectual surgery on galactic understanding." The negotiations revealed a startling truth. The faction within the Zornak Collective that had funded this mission was part of a growing movement that believed rigid technological and social protocols were ultimately destructive. They had hoped humanity would provide an alternative model of civilization. They were not disappointed. Vexera found herself in a position that would have been unimaginable weeks ago. She was no longer defending a mission or protecting classified information. She was participating in the birth of a new understanding of intelligent life. The human approach was simultaneously terrifying and beautiful to the Zornak. Where their civilization saw borders, humans saw connections. Where the Zornak saw fixed systems, humans saw adaptive possibilities. A critical moment arrived when Krelnak shared a fundamental truth about his civilization. The Zornak had reached a technological plateau, a state of stagnation masked by sophisticated technological veneer. They had become so efficient at managing existing systems that innovation had become almost impossible. Humanity represented something entirely different, a civilization that didn't just manage complexity, but thrived on it. "Your greatest strength," Krelnak explained to Aria, "is your ability to transform failure into opportunity. Your technological and social systems don't just adapt, they evolve through conflict and challenge." The negotiation was revealing a universal truth that transcended individual species. Intelligence was not about perfection. It was about the capacity to learn, to transform, to see potential in the unexpected. As the discussions progressed, it became clear that this was more than a first contact scenario. This was a fundamental reimagining of what intelligent life could be. The Quantum Whisper was no longer just a ship. It had become a bridge between civilizations, a living testament to the power of unexpected encounters. Humanity had not just contained an alien vessel. They had opened a door to a new understanding of existence itself. 37 standard galactic cycles after the Quantum Whisper's arrival, the universe looked fundamentally different. The Zornak Collective no longer existed in its previous form. What had been a rigid, hierarchical civilization had transformed into a dynamic network of adaptive research collectives. And at the center of this transformation stood humanity, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as unexpected catalysts of change. Dr. Krelnak stood before the Galactic Confederation Assembly, his presentation a living holographic testament to the most profound first contact scenario in recorded history. Behind him, a complex visualization showed the intricate web of technological and cultural exchanges that had reshaped multiple civilizations. "We were wrong," he stated, his words translated across 100 different linguistic and technological platforms. Completely and fundamentally wrong. The assembly hall, a massive structure that floated between star systems, fell silent. Representatives from thousands of civilizations listened with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. Captain Vexera, no longer bound by her previous military protocols, stood as a living bridge between her original civilization and this new cosmic understanding. Her presence alone was a statement, a testament to the power of adaptation. The human delegation was led by Dr. Aria Chen, whose quantum linguistics had become the foundation of a new form of interspecies communication. She was not a diplomat in the traditional sense, but an architect of understanding. The transformation had been multifaceted. Humanity had not conquered. They had invited. Their technological approach became a universal model. Where previous civilizations saw technology as a tool of control, humans demonstrated it as a medium of connection. Their open-source approach to scientific discovery, their ability to transform failure into opportunity, their fundamental belief in collaborative innovation. These became the new standard of galactic interaction. The Zornak's most classified research had suggested the possibility of civilizations that were living systems of adaptive intelligence. Humanity had not just confirmed this hypothesis, they had exploded it into a new paradigm of understanding. "Look," Krelnak continued, bringing up a holographic representation that showed the intricate connections between technological development and social evolution. Humanity doesn't just solve problems. They reimagine the entire context of those problems. The universal translator struggled to capture the nuance of his presentation. Words like innovation and adaptation seemed woefully inadequate to describe what had occurred. The quantum whisper, now a museum piece and a living historical artifact, sat at the center of the Galactic Museum. It was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol of a moment when everything changed. Multiple civilizations had discovered something profound. Intelligence was not about perfection. It was about the capacity to transform, to see potential in the unexpected, to turn limitations into opportunities. Dr. Aria Chen stepped forward. Her presentation was not a series of technical diagrams or statistical analyses. It was a living demonstration of human potential, a quantum-level communication that showed how diversity, uncertainty, and collaborative thinking could reshape entire civilizations. "We are not special," she stated, her words resonating across technological and biological barriers. "We are simply willing to be uncertain, to fail, to learn." The Galactic Confederation Assembly witnessed something unprecedented. This was not a diplomatic meeting. This was the birth of a new way of understanding existence itself. The universe had changed, and humanity had been its unexpected architects.